All right, thank you. Well, everybody, welcome to the York County Economic Development Committee meeting on Thursday, July the 10th. Appreciate everybody being here, especially with a busy summer going on, family and grandchildren. So we don't have any guests here today, so we're going to go ahead and jump into our order of business. And the first item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from May 1st. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion on what you read in those minutes? Because everybody read the minutes, right?
No, I wasn't here, so
Okay.
I can't take any of. I wasn't here at that meeting, so I can't even attest to what happened.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, abstain. Aye, okay. Aye, motion passes. Cool. All right, let's talk about the ED fund and some targeted initiatives, and we're going to turn it over to our Economic Development Director, Mitch Miller.
Thank you, Watt.
Yes, sir.
So, wanted to really give you kind of a high-level overview and tell you what's going to be coming here over the next month. As you all know, we've been working with Mark Ferris and really looking at several components. One of those was creating the Economic Development Board. Now that that ordinance has been updated, and now we're in the process of getting nominations in, kind of turning our attention, as we talked about in the past, to the ED fund. Really look at the ED fund as an opportunity for us to kind of give some direction to that ED board, to provide guidance, support, and really help us look at targeted initiatives or projects that really impact what it is we want to impact in economic development. And so you probably have all picked up on it anyway. I know in recent ED meetings, through recent surveys, and through our workshops too, I've been pretty direct in asking you your opinions about what it is that you really want to influence in terms of economic development, what's important to you. And again, I know we had our motion through the ED fund here that was brought forward to the full council, and that was to recommend consideration of the use of ED funds with the qualification of a strategic plan to focus on public-private partnerships, purchase of an option to control our land, infrastructure, and then small business initiatives. And really what I've heard from each of you all, including the members of council who's not here on this committee, wage growth was really important. Community investments, bigger picture, bigger vision, trying to find ways to collaborate that we all can kind of get behind. Small business support, workforce development, and enhancing mobility and our quality of life. And so what I've really worked with Mark on, with our economic development department on, is to say, you know, if we have this fund, what is something that we can do that encompasses this motion that we made, these targeted impacts that we want to have, and really sets up York County for future growth. So what's something that we can latch on to and say, this is important, here's why it's important, and really involve beyond just York County, involve the community, involve the municipality partners, involve the private sector, and really get behind some of these initiatives. And so I want to go over those. You've got probably a more detailed handout in front of you, quick one pages of each project. One is really high level thinking 20 years out, all the way down to when we get to the last in small business, something that we can go ahead and impact tomorrow. So looking big picture about economic development and the opportunity that we have. I've lived here in York County for about a year now, and one thing that I can see that is very common, especially along I-77, is a lot of traffic. There's a lot of dense urban areas in through there, especially as you get closer to Mecklenburg County and really become kind of a subset of Charlotte. And I-77 at certain points of the time are not fun to be on. Tom, I know you know that feeling. You do it every day.
I feel it. I need a helicopter.
But I think too about some of the things that we've talked about being intentional to go after the right types of growth and not be so reactionary to any kind of project that might be coming through the door. But instead position ourselves to say, here's what we want to go after, and we're going to find companies that fit that mold. And so with that, I've given a lot of thought. I know Mark and talking with him and trying to look at examples. I think we're at a position where we can leverage something that's already being done within our community with the Carolina Thread Trail. It's a project that's being done all across the Charlotte region, but more specifically, each county already has a trail master plan that our planning and zoning department's already working with. And so as we've looked at that and looked at some of the nodes that exist today, and then thinking about some of the things that were important, I'll pick on Tommy Atkins because he's not here. He always talks about the traffic and making sure that we can keep people off the road and controlling growth. And so in doing so, when we're out and we're recruiting projects that really the only way to it is via car, it's going to put more traffic on the road, create more congestion, and just add to the problems that we already are facing. And so I'm proposing that we look at a project called Project Trail Mix, where we leverage the completion of the Carolina Thread Trail to really strengthen our business and talent recruitment efforts. Some good examples that we could look at where some of these types of projects are already happening. Probably closest to us is Greenville, South Carolina, with the Swamp Rabbit Trail. Currently exists about 28 miles worth of trail. They've used it as a way to really connect neighborhoods, communities, and put more of an emphasis on using your bike or your feet to get from point A to point B rather than getting in your car. It's even been really successful to the point of attracting businesses. So when companies come in, whether it be corporate headquarters, office locations, things along those lines, they can utilize the trail system and actually live, work, and play all within a confined area without adding to a bigger problem with traffic. Bentonville, Arkansas was another pretty amazing example. That's where Walmart's headquartered, as well as some other large companies. The Walton family was really instrumental in looking at trails as a talent recruitment effort, but it's really become a true part of their identity. They're actually known as the mountain bike capital of the world. And that's something that they're striving to become. And another one is Chattanooga, Tennessee. They've done a really good job really with outdoor recreation as a whole to attract manufacturers, office, environment type users that really fit their brand and identity. So as we look at this, and I'm thinking bigger picture about how does this impact York County, what do we really want to accomplish with it? Some of the things that I keep hearing that I think are important is really looking like how do we position this trail as a growth management tool? How do we make sure that the growth that we do have is sustainable and it's not going to be anything that's going to impact our infrastructure system that currently exists to a high degree and really help us recruit quality companies that are going to bring high wage jobs. I'll give you an example, like an LPL locating close to Ann Springs, close to Greenway. That's a phenomenal example to say, what can we do to position ourselves to get more quality projects like an LPL? Not just to grow here, but to live here.
Being so close to Sugar Creek Parkway that dumps out in the Region Park.
It's a good point too, and I think proximity to Charlotte allows us the opportunity to leverage on something that they're already doing. And we can
Right.
connect in and say we have direct access to a large metro, which is talent that can come right over here without ever getting into their car.
Do you have,
Exactly.
do you have a map of the current thread trail?
Do. I should have brought it with me. I do have a large scale map. I've met with their director and they're updating it right now. Diane Deal's been working with them. They're going to update that plan, but it gives pretty good perspective how to connect everything from Clover to Rock Hill to Lake Wild and beyond.
Is there any, are there any nodes through, I'd like to see that. I mean, I know the council just approved a trail plan
Yeah.
that, you know, I would have assumed, and I just want to make sure that other council is aware, because there was some lively discussion about trails altogether. I mean, this is specific to the Carolina Thread Trail, and it touches on a lot of things throughout our county. And I know that Mark was instrumental in the Swamp Rabbit Trail, and that's has had a lot of success. I guess when I first heard this though, I'd like to see the trail and just kind of see where it goes, and because what are the impacts of that, and
Good point.
does it go, and how does this dovetail with the trails plan that we set aside funding to try and look at first, from a council perspective?
Well, in
Yeah.
theory, this is one way to help fund whatever comes of that trail master plan too.
Sure. Well, I mean, again, this all goes back to quality of living and the opportunity for people to enjoy the area. So York, again, visit York County, you know, how they promote so many different events. It'd be interesting to see, like, when they have bike races or when they have trail runs, what is the demographic of those people that participate in those races, right? To identify, you know, you've got majority of them that are maybe in finance, or they maybe, what is that? What would be some of the businesses that may say, okay, I want to move here because majority, a lot of my workers participate in outdoors functions. So again, I think that might be something interesting to look at.
The other thing is, one of the objectives here is to collaborate with Carolina Thread Trail so that as they begin to plan out their trails, where they're actually going to exist and which ones are priorities, we're taking those trails towards our natural assets in the county. Like, I won't even say for instance, but you know what they are. And then our business parks. So
Well-
we're intentionally putting a long-term plan
Exactly.
together.
Exactly.
To allow those trails to connect
That's
with
what I was thinking.
the business parks, but also our natural assets where people go anyway.
Yeah.
So what Mitch said earlier, and LPL is a great example, if you had a trail system that connected LPL to Sugar Creek, my son rode his bike when he lived on Selwyn. He rode his bike to work every day on the Sugar Creek Parkway.
Mhm.
And so you get those cars off the road, right? So we're creating a way for people to travel other than traditionally in a car. And when you think about it, I was just in DC last week, and just the evolution of a motored scooter, I saw the bikes, because they have larger wheels, you can roll over more stuff, it's safer. So more and more people are looking for alternative ways to get around, especially the younger generation.
E-bike.
Well, e-bikes are just, I mean, you go, like when we were over in, on our trip overseas, and some of those cities overseas that are just saturated with e-bikes.
Yes.
You know, and again, I think we got an opportunity, if we connect our trails right, and connect them, as you were saying, into where we plan out parks, for example, not just parks, but where we, industrial parks, then the connection in that piece is critical. And connecting our parks together is, again, another evolutionary.
Say this
Well, and I
numbers-
think that's why I think having a map is important, because if what we're saying is, and we're talking about this in the context of use of ED development funds, that this is a goal, I certainly support leveraging those things, but I would like to know, are the trails going actually to industrial parks? Is the
No,
south
no.
side getting any, I would like to see the map. I
It's
think we
it's
need to
not
see
what
the
you
map to
think,
see.
it's very sparse right now. And there's a lot of open area in the middle that's no connectivity.
Yeah.
That's why this master plan is so important, and
Yeah.
collaborating with municipalities,
Mhm.
I can list, I'm not, publicly, I won't say past that, but.
I do think this, and I'll say this, that trail map, probably getting more granular is important. It's kind of high level, you don't know exactly what parcels they're going through,
Yeah,
but you kind of know the direction.
or the area of the county.
I think the big thing that and I would look at this economic development board to really think through, that last tab that I have here is position the trail as a growth management tool. Where do we anticipate future business parks to go?
Right.
What types of development do we want to have happen along that trail? And then utilizing our resources like with Jonathan, planning and development, to maybe do some overlays to say, these are the types of businesses and projects we expect. Maybe use the MCIP designation as a way to think about leveraging funding to do some of these projects, whether it's a developer or a company coming in, that's part of any incentive agreement that we may do. I think those are the types of things I think we can be intentional about. We can kind of have that growth and get exactly what it is that we're looking for as a quality employer in our community.
Yep.
I think the thing that we're missing, and this is aside from this, when we give incentives, I understand the job creation side, I understand the investment side. It's hard for the average citizen to do that, to understand that. But what I do think they can see is that if we can get a company to come in and maybe they get some of those, but also have a community investment back in as part of that,
Yeah.
they can understand the fact that not only is this company coming in and bringing jobs, but they're gonna dedicate, X amount of dollars to go towards 1.5 miles of a new trail segment. When we start talking like that, investment becomes so much different about how people look at economic development.
Right.
If there's one thing that I've gathered being here a year now, is I think we've done a really poor job in economic development talking about the positives of what we do. People have no idea. We gotta do way better. And the only way I know that we can do that is truly have community impact. So if we do this and we talk about it and we're not afraid to go have town halls or talk about it on social media to a higher degree, and people see and feel like they're part of that process, when we bring employers in, they know we're gonna bring a quality product and know that we're bringing somebody that's investing in our community. We've gotta get over that, because we've been missing that.
Well, I think the Rails Trails program, again, I think that there's bike clubs out there, right, that are looking at this. And the other thing too is I think we also need to utilize the asset we have as the Catawba River, right? And utilize that for however we need to, because that's already built, right? We just need to be able to market it, and we are gonna with our parks, but I think that there is, other opportunities there too. Yeah.
Significant.
Does any of
Yeah.
this, does any of the thread trail go through any of the south side of, I mean, is any,
I
we don't know
know,
where any of it goes?
I know that the connection has it going into downtown, and I do know, just because I know general points on a map, I definitely know it's going through the top of Bend. Like, I can tell you designated points based off of the high level overview. This is where I think we need to get to a granular point of really understanding, where do you want this trail to go? What are the parcels that we're looking at? And I think that's gonna help us shape, we probably could even have some creative, opportunities to have, we could probably change it depending on the type of development that we're doing.
And there's the thread trail, and then there's spurs that if council wants to think about in the future, that could come off of that. So I don't think you're bound by the thread trail. The thread trail is something that's in movement now, there's a vision for it, and there's public-private partnerships that can make that happen, which you really want to double down on. But in terms of spurs that come off of that to industrial parks or other
Right.
things.
Connectivity into that trail.
That's
In
right.
terms of
Into
what-
that trail.
In
Yeah.
terms of what we're being asked to do here as a committee though, how are we going to, understanding that we did have some lively discussion in council where I think you guys were a little bit maybe on a different, I may be misspeaking, like how are we gonna deal with, how do we, let me ask it this way, how do we plan to move this forward? Because if I could see the map, that would help, but I don't even know where we're talking about. And so, are we going to take this issue and send it to an ED board, or are we taking the issue and we're gonna deal with it when we deal with the trails plan, with the money that we've set aside? How are we gonna have that discussion? How do you see that happening?
It's a great question. So I've already met with the Carolina Thread Trail. I think that's where you gotta start.
Mhm.
Essentially, they're the arm that's already building our trails in our community, and they are currently going through a master plan update. They had an anonymous donor give a significant amount of money to do this update, so that would come at no cost to us. I think we gotta also engage Parks and Rec, and we gotta engage planning and have a bigger level conversation. But I do think that this could be a project that we have the ED board look at and say, we're interested in getting into the trail game and really looking at economic development through a different lens. We need your help, your support, your guidance. And let's come up with a true plan about how we're gonna have a community engagement and make this happen. And that's everything from a time frame to funding mechanisms to beyond.
I'm not surprised that you have an anonymous donor, because anywhere this trail goes through, it just increases property values and it directs where some of the investments go in, and that's why I think it's really important
Mhm.
that, I just wanna make sure that, that whatever we do here today, that there still is, that council still has an opportunity to get on board and understand it before we have folks going off in a direction that we weren't sure they're going. But I think this is, if you're looking for, what are we asking for
What's really
specifically
important
today?
is for us to collaborate with the Carolina Thread Trail, because they're I think October, they're getting into their master plan. And it's
Yeah.
time for us to be on the same page, communicating with
Yeah.
them and them understanding what it is we're trying to accomplish, we understand what they're trying to accomplish.
Right.
Because you look at the south side, so the Catawba Indian Nation has you referred to it as a spur, they have a spur at the Catawba Indian Nation, runs along the Catawba River.
Yeah, I'm aware of that side. I'm
And
talking
then you
about
got
through
River
the
Wall.
industrial areas that
Right.
are
Mhm.
Well, that-
over there.
See,
Instead of it just always.
that hasn't been a focus of the Carolina Thread Trail at this point, to deliberately, intentionally map the trail in areas that connect your natural assets, and also, in this case, for us selfishly, connects our business parks.
I'll get you out the map. I think you need the
Yeah,
map.
yeah, I think if we understand where they're going, then we can talk about connectors, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the big thing, and again, I'm going back to when I first came into this role, Christy, you said this and it stuck with me from day one. When we think about this economic development fund, we need to have a bigger vision. We need to have something that brings in multiple partners and is community minded. And when we put this project together, really trying to think about what are some of the things that are important to council, it was also with the thought of how is this community driven and how do we get multiple partners around the table to focus on one key community initiative. And this is a really good opportunity because York is involved in it, Clover would be involved in it, Rock Hill's already involved in it. I think that's the side of we can be a unifier rather than a divider. And we can be more intentional with what we're actually going out recruiting.
So the question, what would you say, the answer to that is then, that we want to go collaborate with Carolina Thread Trail?
Mhm.
That's the
Yeah,
first
I
step.
definitely think that's a start. I think it's important to maybe bring Diane Deal in, because I know that she's been probably the most involved with the Carolina Thread Trail.
Mhm.
And that way we have planning, it's part of that conversation rather than us duplicating efforts. And then, you know, maybe I can lean in on you and you can tell me who else needs to be around that table from the county's perspective. We kind of compared it against the strategic plan for the county, and a project like this is touching on 5 key areas that we all voted on and approved and presented to say, this is important to us. Helps us grow economic opportunities. It really hones in on premier parks, giving us a true asset from a recreation standpoint. I think if you get zoning involved and we're really intentional with what we're going after, we're growing responsibly and not just accepting anything and everything that's going to create potentially a nuisance or traffic or beyond. It's going to really help us from an infrastructure standpoint, better protect our roads because we're trying to keep people off of them. And then lastly, I think it really looks at how do we engage the community at a higher level, which in return, that's a big part of high-performing organization. It gets the community engaged in what we're doing, and they know rather than, I'm sorry I say it this way, showing up at a council meeting and making us like far.
Right, and I think that it also, I think one of our main thing too is attract higher paying jobs. I think when you're selling your community as a quality of living community where you can participate in all these things, I think you're gonna drive the value or the benefit of companies coming in here to bring in higher paying jobs. I think it's a great selling point.
I think, I would just say, I would hope that any vision that we have for this is all inclusive, and it's
100%.
to, Porter Road is a big example of that. Is it gonna go there? Is it gonna go to the areas that are in the unincorporated area, not just through the municipalities in areas where we do wanna see growth? It's important to me that it be not just concentrated to benefit, the municipalities, that it go to the areas that are outside of that too, to help with the city's county collaboration.
If I can interject, it would be countywide, and if you think about something happening out on Porter Road as an example, in the future, part of the agreement with the developer is they would have a fee attached to their development project to help pave some of the trails going out of their development. So there are multiple strategic partners in this to bring this to fruition in the long term. But it's gonna take
Good.
time, because you're talking, a paved trail is $1 million per mile.
Oh, believe me, I know, we've got other, look, we're talking about using some of the
Positive.
funds, and I think just, it gets back to having that the common vision first, and
That's right.
it almost is,
Well,
I'd like to see them out, I'll just say that again, I'd like to see them out, and I'd like to understand a little bit about how that, how you see that process working in
Yeah.
terms of who's, how do we see this taking the next steps? What does that look like?
yeah, and I think, Mitch, your point, agreed. I think your point around, though, companies, you know, when we look at doing fee and lieu, et cetera, though, we do look at a component of them participating in this adventure, right? To expand the opportunities of our area and connectivity from within a trail perspective.
I think we have to.
Well, and I think it's for the community itself, I think it's a great selling point for any business for them to come in and we can sell that back to the community.
Well,
you know, based on that.
Think about the announcement we just had on Monday. And granted, we didn't do local incentives on that, but
That's even better.
it is. I'm not denying it one bit, but I would say you could go to someone in downtown Fort Mill right now, ask if they know anything about it and the impact that it really brings, and they probably wouldn't have a good answer. But when you can relate to them and something that's important and have the community investment tie into it beyond just a job
Right.
or investment machinery and equipment, I
Right,
think that's the side that you start to get true buy-in and impact directly to the citizens of York County.
Yeah.
Because we're providing a service that they can utilize and they can see, they can touch, they can feel.
mhm.
We start acting on that level as a way of when we do economic development. I think that's the part that really starts to change the narrative about our department. Again, I go back to when we're going through the budgets and we're talking about tourism. I think the general public understands the fact that tourism is important because we all go out to eat. We all love to go to caravans. Those are all things that we can understand because we do them. I don't think everybody necessarily goes to Schnenberger and goes to work here today.
Right.
They don't quite understand the impact that that's gonna bring, but if they can see it and understand a portion of that revenue generated, it's going right back into the community.
Yeah.
And it's a trail system that they utilize, and it's going through their neighborhood, or through their place of employment. It's a totally different
Huge.
story,
Huge.
totally different dynamic.
And there's also the marketing component to it, right? I think we just gotta get better
There
at
is.
telling the story to people.
There is. This isn't the map that he gave me, but this is probably the closest thing that I could give you right now that they have online. These orange connection points essentially are the proposed areas. This is probably where we need to get a little bit more granular. I can tell you in my conversation with him, like in this part of Fort Mill up here, the trail has shifted because it's all been predicated on what developments were coming through and could he convince the developer to put the trail through the development. And so it may look like here, but it may shift over, 1,000 feet this way, depending on the development coming in and how it works within the developer's
Yeah.
subdivision that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think his approach is great, but he's basically basing the future of growing this trail based on development and convincing people that it's good to put it in there.
Mhm.
I think where we could come in is really influence, whether we're talking about multi-county industrial park designated areas, where we can leverage future revenue to help build it and guide it where we want it, or even use it to say like at Southbridge up in Fort Mill to say, this is the type of development we want, and it's gonna have X amount of miles of trails going through it. If you can do that, we can work with you when you have an employer coming in, like another Daimler. That's the side where I think we can leverage the opportunities and really get this thing funded at a higher and faster pace than what is being done today.
Sure.
Those are the adopted lines, that's what they've already adopted, does that mean, so they haven't been built out, but that they've adopted generally where they are?
Right.
So we're missing a loop down at the bottom, it looks like.
Yeah, there's a lot that's missing through here. I mean, and this is probably pretty similar throughout every county in the Charlotte region. I mean, it's a concept and an idea, and I think what they need is a partner.
And I think when I talk to folks when you start talking about trails, especially to the community, one thing that they do get offended by is spending money on trails when our roads aren't fixed.
Yeah.
And also putting trails in places where, it's dangerous. I don't know what it's called, but deciding that there's a bike trail that should be on, 324, just because we say we want it to go there, that's not, it's dangerous, and it needs to be, we're talking about park trails that aren't, we're talking about an actual trail, right, that's off the road. Like, when I think about trails, I think about Hilton Head and the trails system that they have. It's set off side of the road, it's actually intended to be a trail, a maintained trail. It's not, I'm scooting on the side of the road and we have to drive around you to get there.
Well, you
So-
could have some of that too, like going through Tech Park as an example, the trail going through Tech Park. Yeah, you would have some of that, but that's probably not necessarily the goal.
I'm with you. I live off 160. I'd ride my bike to work every day if I had a dedicated trail to Baxter.
Yeah.
You know that.
There's a lot of people that get on the road.
There's no way I'm getting on
Rural folks
160.
get frustrated on that.
Yeah,
I support the concept. I think we should have council take a look at this and at least generally give some feedback on where we'd like to see the trails go before we just hand it off, so that you have buy-in from the council members. And I don't know if that's through the committee, through the transportation committee and the funding that we set aside, or if it's just have a discussion.
I love that idea. I think it gives more opportunity for the other council members to get feedback about what's important.
yeah,
I think we just need to build it out a little bit more before we do that, and have
Yeah.
them follow up with y'all with the map.
yeah.
And get more
Yeah.
structure around what we're doing with our Trails Master Plan.
Right.
And how these things connect, but I think that's where we're lining up.
So, one of the questions I'd like to ask him is that, what is the low-hanging fruit here? Like, where can we make the longest connection in the lowest hanging fruit? You know what I mean? So, we could do a pie in the sky vision, it's gonna take us 30 years to get to, but why don't we, if we focus on one single project to say we got 50 miles of bike trails already lined up that are gonna be here in 2 years, I think that's a selling point. So anyways, yeah, food for thought.
And I think too, phases and have an approach. I know I said it before, but I just kind of reiterate it here. This is more the high level that
Yeah.
we're getting into a more detailed plan.
Yep.
Yeah.
That we'll have to be able to present.
Yeah,
I just wanted you all to kind of have an idea of what's coming and get thoughts.
and make
Yeah,
sure
we really
you
don't have a
have
seat at the table right now, and that's what we're asking for, is a seat at the table.
100%,
Participate in the
100%.
conversation.
Yep, yep, we got a lot of questions.
Next project that we'll talk through really centers around ag, and we've labeled it Next Crop York. The idea and the concept here is really to create a centralized food hub that supports local farmers by streamlining sales and distribution while really drawing attention to the ag community and positioning York County to be the ag hub of the Charlotte region. Another good example to look at here is in Greenville with the Swamp Rabbit Cafe. It is located off the trail, but it's a local food hub. They employ about 110 people. Essentially, they work with farms in Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina with a certain radius where they're selling that local product directly to people within the Greenville area. The unique part about that is it's bringing local food, so you know where your food's coming from. I'll pick on Tommy Atkins again about creating a community where you know exactly who it is you're buying from and how important that is, instead of going down the street to Walmart. And you know exactly where your food's coming from, how it's raised. Phenomenal example was I was coming back from Beaufort, South Carolina last week and stopped in the middle of nowhere. I couldn't even tell you what city I was in, south of Columbia, good ways, at Riser's Farm. I was hungry, I didn't want to get on the interstate. I stopped in there, and it's a working farm that has a restaurant that operates Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Mhm.
And everything that you can get right off their line was either grown there or essentially processed there. And you knew exactly who the farmer was. You could see him coming in with the beans, put them in the fridge, and you knew exactly what you were eating.
Exactly.
And that's the side of it that we've got a lot of those potential experiences here, and we just not put them into a bucket. To say, how can we help these individuals sell their product, sell it locally, and leverage the fact that we've got Charlotte at our doorstep that will come down here and buy that experience all day, every day, and go home. I think that's the side that's really utilizing the assets and the resources that we have, but the people, the knowledge. You'll hear about it in the director's report. We've been really, I've been spending a lot of time with Author Black at Black's Peaches, talking about the idea, the concept, and trying to figure out, like, how can we connect into the farming community and do something like this. Clemson's been involved, the city of York's been involved to a degree, and I think the big thing for us is, it's not like Project Trail Mix from the standpoint that we're looking 20 years out, but how do we become a facilitator to really support the ag community because it's part of our identity? How do we focus on marketing and education, supporting our farmers, leveraging our proximity to Charlotte, and really strengthening our identity from that standpoint?
And ultimately, you'd be connecting the trails to these strategic locations as well.
That would be the hope long-term,
Yeah.
for sure, but,
Yep.
you know.
Well, McBee's on the way to Myrtle Beach is always a classic.
Cloud Farms, yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's incredible.
Any thoughts, comments on this one?
I think it's just good.
I think it's important to our community, going to, what, 1790, 1785, when were we founded?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think all this stuff is great. I just, again, I think we need to market things better.
100%.
We're working on that.
Yeah.
Well, and a big part, and you'll hear it, learn more in this next one, this Make It York County brand, and really how do we solidify a better partnership with the chamber and with Visit York County. I think Visit York County's fingerprints are really all over this.
Oh, yeah.
And I've talked with Andy, we even talked today about some of the potential, and he's pretty excited about, you know, how they could leverage, you know,
Yep.
not only their assets, but really their strengths in marketing to help us out.
And one thing with Visit York County, you know, similar to what Rock Hill does, where they give them a list of things they expect them to do every year. I do want us as an organization, because we're giving them so much money, to be more descriptive on what we expect from them, more of a work plan of sorts. So I do think, you know, obviously Mitch and his team's gonna help of pulling together annually the things we need from them, so we can just have more of a contract. I think would be a good thing too. So this would obviously be some part of that too. Really treating them as our marketing arm to some degree, because that's what they are right now.
100%.
So we need to formalize that, and that's something that's on my radar this year.
I agree. Yeah, we,
It's a big
yeah,
priority.
that's a big priority. Yeah, that's a good one.
The last
The
project.
only thing I would add is I do think, and I've heard some feedback already on this, is that it's important to make sure that you get, you mentioned that you've had conversations with a select group of folks that's in a specific area, I think I'm pretty familiar with what the idea is for that. I think it's important that you include and that you make it inclusive and that you hear from stakeholders throughout the farming industry and not be, too fixated on one, there's a lot of folks. I think to me, what we're trying to accomplish is collaboration amongst all the farmers, and there are a lot of them throughout the county.
For
And
sure.
I think we need to get feedback from them across the board.
Agreed. And I think what will go a long way is what we're doing with ag to make it family friendly.
Mhm.
People that own that property, let's be smart about it and let's make it home sweet home for them. So it's an opportunity for them to have less, anyways, you know where I'm coming from on
No, it's
Good.
true. And,
that. Yeah, I
I've
think that's a big deal.
I've been
It's a big
here,
deal.
sorry, Tom.
Yeah.
I've been here a year and you're spot on. Just by chance, I've got to know him pretty well, but without a doubt, I think this has got to be more of a community-led initiative from more than just him. And this is an author's idea. This is something that we just are looking at as an opportunity. And I probably just use my relationship that I've been able to create to throw that idea out to him and ask, what do you think? How could you make it better? Definitely think we need to do that to a higher degree. But I do believe tapping into our identity of what this community has been about for a long time. I think too, the preservation side of things that I hear is really important from council. We've got to do things that really embrace this side of development, so they don't feel the pressures long term that ultimately they have to sell the property because
Yeah.
they can't afford to continue to
Well,
operate.
exactly. We gotta make it very affordable for them to allow them to move forward what they need to do.
The last thing, this probably falls more in line with the Make It York County initiative, where we could partner with the chamber and partner with Visit York County, but really trying to think from a standpoint of how can we effectively go in and support small business tomorrow, rather than trying to figure out how do we create a funding plan and pick winners and losers,
Right.
and get into a risky business of, offering low interest loans. Mecklenburg County does that. Some things have been successful, some things have not. I'm not an expert in any of that, and I don't know if I necessarily would want to put my neck out there to say we need to take this risk. But I do think there's some ways that we can utilize technology that's at our fingertips to really empower small businesses in York County and help them move inventory and sell their products. Beyond waiting on someone to walk through their door, really, how do we get them in front of a broader audience to really have a higher impact so they're seeing more sales that they can continue to invest right back into their small business.
Yeah.
And I give you an example of what we've talked about, and I talked with Andy about it today, is could we, under this Make It York County brand, create maybe a pilot program and test out 5 businesses, create a partnership with them within the chamber, Visit York County, and really look at how are we going to get you comfortable talking in front of your phone, selling your product through e-commerce.
Mhm.
And as you do that, and you see revenue generated, how are you also promoting York County on our behalf? And really looking at making it a Make It York County brand about how you're getting the support as a small business
Mhm.
to effectively grow and reach markets that you never thought were possible.
Mhm.
And so I've got a small video. I'll show you. It probably, Gary Vee would probably describe it so much better than I could, but this is
So
about.
can I say one thing before you
Yeah,
launch
yeah.
it real quick? On this thing, so I had a conversation with Dean around the Small Business Toolkit. He's been getting a lot of interest in people going to it and stuff. So one of the things that we talked about was putting an AI component to the Small Business Toolkit. So simplify it, let people just ask a question. AI will scan that whole site and bring back the answer and that type of thing. But one of the things is that from a marketing standpoint, Visit York County, I think that there's an opportunity for them to market that toolkit. And then on top of that, we put in free seminars for people from an education standpoint to link out to. So it's a repository for people to build and to possibly, we can link businesses in their small businesses and advertise it through the Small Business Toolkit. So it's like a synergy from that perspective. We talked about that, and I just wanted to share that with you.
Oh, it's a great point. It's a great point. I'll talk a little bit more about some things I've been testing, but I want you to see this video first because I think it leads into the conversation.
Attention to that. Every one of you has to learn everything you can about TikTok Shop and whatnot. How about this? You're a hairdresser and you sell shampoos. You can go live on Whatnot right now. At the bottom of the screen, this $12 shampoo, and you can just buy it while you're teaching people how to use the shampoo on a customer. Live social shopping is the underpriced attention. There are a ton of creators right now who will never get millions of followers and make millions of dollars, but if they switch to being someone that sells something on social instead of making lifestyle content, they will make millions of dollars. Listen to these stats. Live social shopping in China now, by the most conservative estimates, represents 30% of all e-commerce in China. A $500 billion economy of live shopping in China that is bigger than almost every nation's economy. Where is it?
I say that I've been testing this out. So
Mhm.
I'll say that my son has an addiction to sports cards. I'm tired of sports cards filling up my place. And so I've been utilizing Whatnot as a way to sell his sports cards for him and give him money that he can put back into other things. And the reach that you're able to create, not only through doing that, I've been able to build relationships through social media. I can make certain trades or deals where he's selling something to get something in return. And I think the big thing of it is that it's so much bigger than sports cards. If we could target 5 companies that have a product that could be sold online tomorrow and they're not doing it, we can get them through a process of being comfortable to speak, do it in a way that's creative, and they can reach an audience that they've never reached before and sell product and make money. They can hire more people here, they can grow their business here, and I think the beauty part of it is that this is free marketing and advertising, not just for them, but for York County as a whole. So if I think about how we can influence small business, we gotta get them to a point to meet where the customers already are. Watts, I'm gonna pick on you, man. I guarantee your wife has bought something off of Instagram or somewhere else because she saw it and bought it away. Whether it's a couch, whether it's, a shirt, whether it's makeup, it's already existing today.
Why is it limited to a woman? I mean, you could have bought something off of Instagram.
For my wife, I'm not.
I think Amazon's a
I know a lot of
depot
men
at
that
our
buy
house.
stuff off of these programs.
Maybe Watts has. I didn't want to put him in that category. But
Now I get my wife to do it.
What's wrong with that category?
Oh my
Let's
gosh.
put them in that category.
Watts, I guarantee you probably have bought parts for your bike offline somewhere where you saw something or
Yes.
saw a video.
Yeah.
The best example I can give you is on Monday, I was on TikTok, and an influencer was talking about Las Americas and Rock Hill. Wow, they have Taco Tuesday, 50-cent tacos.
Yeah.
They did a phenomenal video, and I was like, you know what? Tomorrow's Tuesday. I'm gonna go have Taco Tuesday. I showed up. That same video, it probably had a reach at the time I saw it with over 100,000 likes. I showed up at 11:30, and I was probably 20th in line for those tacos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the side of, if we can be part of telling the story and doing it differently and helping people realize that they can sell product and teaching them how to do it effectively, we're influencing small business. This is not gonna cost hardly anything, but I do think there's some marketing components that we could utilize funds from the ED fund to say, not only we're gonna help you sell, visit York County, it's gonna help promote your business, and we're gonna create the experience like I just talked about with Las Americas, and spread it out all across the Charlotte region, so that people are coming here to experience their small business in restaurants, activities,
Exactly.
things along those lines.
Well, agriculture too, think
That's
about
exactly what I was.
educating a
Yeah.
farmer on the way to produce the product now. When I worked on the agritourism project, we met with Commissioner Weathers, and he talked about the farmer of today could farm on 1/10 of the land and generate as much revenue as they do now, farming differently, hydroponics and things of that nature. So there's an educational component to a lot of what you have up there, really.
Yep.
The agriculture and this digital Main Street, for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's a wise investment in people
Huge.
that have a product that they may not see has the ability to be marketed outside of the walls.
So so we did the TKK parade, before, and friends of ours started a small business. This would be absolutely perfect for them, and they were like, they're wanting to participate in a program like this concept. So again, there's so many small businesses that are on, but again, this is ripe for the picking right here.
100%.
Yep.
And I think kind of encompassing those three projects in together, and what I believe that we can do, is really talking about how do we promote this on a bigger level. Again, I go back to the announcement we had on Monday. If we're putting out a social media post that talks about it, we may get 50 likes because it's a job creation announcement. Every other damn community they're doing it. Sorry, but they are. That's what they're doing. How do we differentiate ourselves and talk about ourselves in such a way that people look at us and say, York County is the standard? I think what we have to do is essentially this. In York County, we're really focused on investing in trails because we're really intentional with the type of growth we want. We're investing X amount of $1 million to come in and help us recruit higher level talent and higher level employers. And to date, we've had an impact of X amount of millions of dollars, and here are the businesses we've been able to recruit. If we're talking about that,
Right.
we're going to create synergy and attention, and people are going to look at us to say, well, that's important to my business, or why the heck aren't we doing what York County's doing?
Right.
I go back to saying we've done a poor job promoting what we've been doing right. And we've done a poor job engaging the community, because the community side of that too is we talk about the companies that have come in, how much money of their tax dollars have gone back into public infrastructure to support us all. We start doing it on that level, I think you really will see a dynamic shift and take advantage of the fact that we're minutes from Charlotte, have access to over 3 million people, and we got an international airport, and create an environment that people are going to want to be in because we already have all the assets around us. We're being too reactive with the types of businesses that we have coming to the door.
And I think if we once we start building, we gather testimony, right?
100%.
These business testimonies coming from businesses saying this, again, is a win-win for everybody, right? Because we could say it all day long, but sometimes people want to hear it right from them.
It's going to mean more having a small business talk about the impact of the trail system that
That's right.
they've located beside.
Exactly.
And an LPL talking
Right.
about the same thing attracting.
Right, exactly.
100%.
Yeah.
I'm supportive of all three concepts. The one thing that I would like to add, it's no secret that, first of all, we've got some pretty exciting announcements that are gonna come out in Fort Mill soon and that have already come out. We've got some exciting things happening with 90 that are coming out. We've had the Ag Arena on the west side that there's been investment in, and our schools are doing fantastic things, and we've had investments in business parks throughout the county with the exception of the south side of Rock Hill. And I'm gonna put my hat on as someone who represents that area, and one of the things that I think is critical is to get, that's gonna be the next area. Rock Hill has different concerns that some of the other school districts don't. I mean, that has to do with socioeconomic ability. How do we raise the bar for that area? I think that it would be really forward-thinking if we would include, if kind of what I'm seeing you say is, let's approve some concepts, give it to council, let their feedback, and then we're gonna let the ED board take these things over. I would like to include something that also includes a study, them looking at a study for the south side, again, looking at the Porter Road, the exit 73, and the areas that go down that way. There are little things that can be done in terms of designating some things for, if they're having trouble with food. We are having trouble getting a grocery store there. I think having a plan for that area and investing some time and effort in looking at that before it's just got some unique challenges that thankfully are not present in some of our other school district areas who are thriving and are doing well, and I think that we could provide an element of support and much needed collaboration with all the entities there. So I would suggest, and if you're comfortable, I would make a motion to recommend approval of these concepts all to council with the amendment that I've added, and that we include in that some time, whether it's the first workshop to allow council to put some feedback in before we send any of this to the ED board once it's created.
I mean, I think it sounds, I like the concept of it. Well, go ahead.
You want to second it? Or?
Well, I just wanted to just talk about it for just a second. I think that's good. I support this and I support what you're talking about. I also want to.
Second, if you want to
Yeah,
talk about it.
second it, talk about it.
Well, okay, second. Okay. I do support what you're saying. I do also would want to make sure that we are, to me again, and based on the conversations I had with Dean, I really want us to really start emphasizing where the small business and that small business toolkit in the marketing of it, in the expansion of it, because I think there's a synergy and a center component to it that we can attract people to. So I'd like to add that as part of it.
I'll amend my motion to also include, the expansion of the small business toolkit.
Yeah, I'll second that. Sounds good.
The only comment I'll make is, and I know you're interested in the south side, but this would obviously be a look at the entire county to include the south side. So I'm not sure you need to designate the south side as a special
I do.
project or any differently than the rest of the county, quite frankly.
I think there are unique challenges, and so that's why I've included that. I think it's more of putting together, some of the developers have actually reached out and suggested that, for instance, like, things like Baxter, they don't happen in a vacuum. You have to have the people at the table pulling together to make it more community instead of it. I think that's the challenge that the I-77 has, and the areas that I'm talking about is that that's on fire right now. And if we don't have a hand in trying to help at least navigate a conceptual plan for it, we may not be, it doesn't have the same amount of resources that some of the areas of the county have. So I'm not even suggesting that we necessarily invest money yet. It's a collaborative study of that particular area is I think needed because it's a difference. So
I think that kind of ties into the discussion of the town centers that
Yeah.
are not necessarily in municipalities. They're outside of the municipalities in the unincorporated areas of the county, planning for those one day. And then there's some studies that have been done, I don't know if you're aware of the studies that have been done on the south side and the reasons some things have not come to fruition. I don't know if you're familiar with those. If
no,
you're
I've
not.
talked to some developers who have large amounts of parcels who are very interested, willing to put stakeholder money into it. And so I think having that discussion, that's something that's, I think it's necessary, not something.
Yours sounds a little different than a town center. Yours sounds more comprehensive to an area, whereas town center is more about how you develop density. I think Christie's talking more about an economic development and
I'm
growth
talking-
plan for an area.
Yeah, I think we've got to get ahead of that conceptual plan. Otherwise, it's not going to
Okay.
be residential friendly because it doesn't have the same. It's not going to happen there, so.
So if you're looking at Porter Road versus 903, one is destined to be residential and one's destined to be commercial.
No, I think they're all, I think that area is the area that we're talking about. That area down through 901, 901, especially hitting, the Heckle
Mhm.
line, that's the area that I think we need to take a look at because it's gonna take off if we don't do something very soon. And the interstate is,
Well, and
So going back to the first set of slides there, Mitch, if you go back to that, that's really what those slides address is, when you look at the trail master plan, the trail master plan would tie in those business nodes.
yeah, and I'm not
all
talking
over the
about,
county.
I don't know, I'm not talking about a trail master plan. I think this is distinct. This
Yeah.
is a asking that we take a look at that area and identify the challenges and that our ED board put some thought into how we might get ahead of and prepare for that specific area.
I think that's a good point. And I think you could have correlation even back to some of the things we talked about, that if we say that's important for that area, all develops, how do we incorporate elements of this into the potential of that? And I'd be the first to say that's an area being marketed heavy for industrial, for economic development at the moment.
It is. All right, let's call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nobody's opposed, it passes.
Yeah, I do think there is quite a bit of opportunity down in your area. I think that is.
All right.
What else we got?
Anything else on the Project Trail Mix?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to kind of go through that and appreciate your feedback as well.
That's actually one of the names I like too. I never understood y'all's project names, but I like trail names. That's
I do, I like that too. It makes me hungry
Because he
thinking
came
about
up
it.
with it.
It's fun being creative where I don't have to worry about jobs
Yeah.
and investment. We're thinking about community
Mhm.
vision.
Appreciate the intentional planning that went into putting this together, Mitch. Great
Yeah.
job.
Yeah, nice work.
All right, let's move into the director's report.
I'll be extremely quick, just considering time. There's not been much of an update as it relates to ag and partnerships, other than, I mentioned the food hub, some of the conversations we've had really involved with 4-H, Clemson Extension, Nations Ford Land Trust as well, talking about how do we look at specific areas in York, potentially do something. I mentioned on the business development side, I had a chance to go recently to Boston at the Bio International Convention. I got to go on behalf of the I-77 Alliance, and really it was a partnership with SC Bio, SC Commerce, and Rock Hill went as well, where we were able to actually pitch the former Panther site directly to potential companies as well as developers. I think where we saw probably the biggest impact was talking to consulting groups like Cushman & Wakefield, C.B. Richard Ellis, Ernst & Young. Had really good opportunities to sit down and really talk about what is the vision of that site, what type of opportunities are we looking for, and really hear from them what they're seeing in the biofield about how companies are either moving, what markets are hot, what are not. The South is definitely a very hot spot right now for bio, part of that having to do with cost compared to Boston, for instance.
Mhm.
And two, just having the Research Triangle Park close by, close proximity to labor and talent. Somehow, some way, we still have to pull that down and get that corridor, I would call it, into the Charlotte market. And if we can do that, I think it's going to help Rock Hill out really with that site. Mentioned we had an announcement on Monday. Some good things are really coming forward as well. I'll mention in executive session a couple of things tied to it, but altogether activity has been really, really good. Primarily really looking at a good mix of manufacturing and corporate office, which gives me a lot of hope. I think we're also seeing too some international interest, specifically from places like Canada because of tariffs. A lot of folks who are suppliers to the U.S. are realizing it's going to be more cost effective to do production here. And so we're seeing kind of a wave there as well.
Mhm.
And the last thing I mentioned just on partnership, we had the Make It York County video that debuted at the Taste of Tourism event on May 19th. And we're also working with the Chamber and Visit York County on a website that's going to launch at the end of August, kind of really encompassing the brand. As I talk about projects like the Digital Main Street, I think that's a perfect segue to really use that brand, use those partnerships and latch on and really kind of amplify that at a higher degree.
Sounds good.
And last thing I'll mention, I just figured it's probably the best way to put it here, and we'll work on this map. You also have a copy here of the Multi-County Industrial Park ordinance that's in place. It's updated every year that designates the sites that are in that designation.
Yeah.
As I get that map from GIS, I'll email that to you all as well.
So the question I had with that too is that have we looked at other properties that we could look to incorporate in the future?
I'd say from a very preliminary stance, yeah,
Mhm.
we have. It's part of the work we did with Mark, really thinking about future business employment sectors
Mm-hmm.
or parcels that could be included in that.
Right.
But as far as being intentional, to say we need to go put this in this designation today, tomorrow, whatever,
Mhm.
not done that yet. I think it's going to take probably more of a focus from this committee and from our economic development board,
Okay.
especially as we talk about projects like Project Trail Mix, or if we're thinking about being intentional with maybe Southbridge or things like that, to say, let's do it now, and let's be
Right.
intentional with that type of development and use future revenues to figure out what we want it to look like.
Right.
If it's extending a trail, then it's at Southbridge that we partner with a developer and we do exactly what we want to do there. And use
Right.
that designation as a way to really leverage the revenue and have it spent in a way that makes sense.
Right.
That we have a
Yeah.
quality development.
Because there's a lot of, there's definitely a stamp of value there that I think we could take advantage of that.
Without a doubt.
We look at, kind of be strategic and start looking at properties. I think there's good value in that.
Without a doubt. I think there's things that we can do beyond the Economic Development Fund that, we can plan for 10 years out if we go ahead and put this property in that designation.
Yeah.
So we're prepared for it rather than being really reactional and not really having a plan to do it.
Right.
All right, very good comments. Appreciate it, Nick. Let's Do I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss Project Cross, Project Elwood?
Yeah.
Can I ask one last thing on the future discussion?
Sure.
In addition to the multi-county industrial park, I think it was referred to this committee for us to take a look at industrial designated land and being able to have some flexibility to clean it up so that it's more marketable for prospective businesses to come to. I know that we talked about that. I'm pretty sure it was referred to this committee. If we can make sure that we have some of that feedback. This-
We'll work with Karen to figure out exactly what we referred. But I think you're.
We had the one
We've had
specific
conversations about, I know what
example.
you're talking about, and I know Mitch and I both looked into it. But we just have to pull what we referred. We can do that, be ready next time.
Okay.
But we're familiar with what
So-
you're bringing up.
Sounds good. So I got a motion for economic development matters, Project Cross, Project, evaluate in a Project Quicksilver. Can't talk.
All right, second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're gonna move into executive session. All right, there was no action taken in executive session. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
All right, thank you so much.
All right. Awesome.